What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, the global order is cracking in real time, not quietly, not behind closed doors, but openly, aggressively, and with consequences that could reshape the world for decades? Because that's exactly what's happening. And at the center of it isn't just Donald Trump, or Greenland, or tariffs, or NATO. It's Canada. And more specifically, one man who almost no one expected to step into this role, MarkCarney. Donald Trump is no longer hinting. He is openly threatening to take Greenland. Not through diplomacy. Not through negotiations. But through pressure, tariffs, and the unmistakable suggestion that force is not off the table. This isn't theory anymore. This isn't rhetoric for domestic audiences. This is power politics, out in the open, aimed directly at the Arctic and at Europe's northern flank. And here's the part that should make everyone pause. While most world leaders are hesitating, ducking cameras, issuing carefully worded statements, or choosing silence, one leader is doing the opposite. MarkCarney has gone public, gone global, and gone all in. In a matter of days, Carney crossed 3 continents. He reshaped Canada's trade strategy. He confronted Trump's escalation head-on. And now, Canada is preparing to send troops into one of the most sensitive geopolitical flashpoints on Earth. This is not routine diplomacy. This is not symbolic posturing. This is Canada stepping onto the world stage and standing directly in Donald Trump's way, and in doing so, trying to stop a global disaster before it starts.
Now, 2 Canadian officials confirmed to CBC News that MarkCarney is weighing contingency plans to send a small group of soldiers to Greenland for exercises with NATO allies.
Because Greenland is no longer just ice, isolation, and geography. Greenland is leverage. Greenland controls Arctic access routes that are becoming more valuable by the year as ice melts and shipping lanes open. It sits at the center of emerging military corridors and commercial pathways. And most critically, it anchors NATO's northern defense posture. Donald Trump understands this perfectly. That's why he's revived the idea of taking Greenland, not through negotiation, but through coercion. Tariffs against European allies. Economic threats. Escalation. And an implicit message that couldn't be clearer: resist and pay economically. That is not diplomacy. That is coercion. And coercion, when it goes unanswered, becomes precedent. That's where Canada enters the picture in a way almost no one saw coming.
Is this the right time for Canada to be sending soldiers to Greenland?
Absolutely. It's a commitment that we made in the past. Canada is a member of NATO, a proud member of NATO, and the Prime Minister and the official opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, there's a Canadian consensus that we believe in NATO, we believe in keeping our commitments, and that what President Trump is threatening to do on either the tariff side or on purchasing side, or trying to leverage and threaten people's jobs in other countries by imposing tariffs so that he can illegally annex Greenland, is utterly irresponsible and a threat to NATO and a threat to global security. So, yeah, that's my long way of saying it's the absolutely appropriate thing for Canada to do.
Canada is now preparing to do something it hasn't done in a generation. MarkCarney is actively weighing the deployment of Canadian troops to Greenland, not as a symbolic gesture, but as part of NATO sovereignty and infrastructure protection exercises. Let that sink in for a moment. These drills are not routine participation. They exist for moments exactly like this. Moments when territorial pressure stops being hypothetical. Moments when deterrence has to be visible, not verbal. When words alone no longer slow escalation. By moving Canada closer to the Greenland theatre, Carney is sending a signal before any announcement is even made. Canada is watching. Canada is positioned. Canada is ready. And only once you understand that does Carney's earlier warning suddenly snap into focus. At a press conference in Doha, Carney didn't hedge. He didn't soften the message. He made it clear he was deeply dissatisfied with the direction Donald Trump was taking global affairs. He framed tariff threats and territorial pressure for what they are: escalation, not negotiation. He rejected the idea that economic coercion could ever justify challenging sovereignty. That wasn't posturing. That wasn't rhetoric for headlines. That was context. Because now, with Canadian troops potentially deploying to Greenland, Carney's message has evolved from words into deterrence. This is the red warning light. Not a threat. Not a provocation. A boundary. A message to Donald Trump that any misadventure, economic or territorial, will not be met with silence, hesitation, or fragmentation. It will be met with allies standing together. And Canada stepping forward. And here's why this moment is bigger than Greenland. If a NATO member can openly threaten territorial acquisition and face no unified response, the alliance fractures. And once that fracture appears, it doesn't stay localized. It spreads. That fracture benefits only one actor, Russia. A weakened NATO presence in the Arctic collapses deterrence in Europe. It destabilizes Ukraine's defense framework. It invites revisionist powers everywhere to test boundaries they were previously afraid to cross. Canada's potential troop deployment is not symbolic. It is a stabilizing force. It is a signal that rules still apply, even when powerful actors try to ignore them. And that's why MarkCarney has suddenly become one of the most closely watched Western leaders on the planet. He is one of the few willing to challenge Donald Trump directly, not emotionally, not theatrically, but institutionally. By labeling tariff threats as escalation. By defending sovereignty as non-negotiable. By aligning Canada visibly with Denmark and Greenland. This is not anti-American. It is anti-chaos. And that distinction matters. Because this is precisely why Carney is now being elevated on the global stage. The World Economic Forum has issued a special invitation to him. Not because Canada is loud, but because Canada is clear. At a time when global leadership is fractured, Carney is offering coherence. Rules matter. Borders matter. Alliances matter. And that message is arriving in Davos at the exact same moment Donald Trump is expected to be there too.
There's an opportunity right in front of world leaders who are attending the World Economic Forum in Davos this week. Is there an opportunity for sidebar talks to occur where a solution could be reached?
Well, I mean, there is broad and deep unpopularity around President Trump's approach to foreign policy, and specifically about Greenland. You've seen the public opinion data that is out there that shows north of 70–80% of Americans do not agree with this. 2 out of 3 Republicans do not agree with this kind of belligerence towards Greenland, and that this is a misadventure that risks America's reputation in the world and the security framework that has served America for a very long time. I think the best thing for the world to do is to stand shoulder to shoulder and show clear strength and defiance against this kind of irresponsible rhetoric and perhaps actions by President Trump, such that the sort of crumbs of courage that might exist still in what's left of the Republican Party might find a little bit of spine and backbone in order to assert themselves, to tell President Trump to back away and to not do this.
This year, the World Economic Forum in Davos is not about speeches. It's not about symbolism. It's about containment. Trump's threats over Greenland, his use of tariffs as political weapons, and his willingness to challenge sovereignty have forced world leaders into crisis mode. Stability can no longer be assumed. Silence is no longer neutral. That's why MarkCarney's presence in Davos matters so much. He's not there to observe. He's there to coordinate. Behind closed doors, Carney is working to align allies around a simple but powerful message: escalation will not be rewarded. European leaders need reassurance that NATO unity still exists. Smaller nations need to know they won't be left exposed. Markets need confidence that chaos won't dictate global policy. And then there's the contrast that makes Davos unavoidable this year. Donald Trump and MarkCarney. 2 visions of global order. In the same place. At the same time. One driven by pressure and intimidation. The other by coordination and deterrence. Carney's role is to prevent fragmentation. Because if leaders leave Davos divided, escalation accelerates. If they leave aligned, it slows. That's why Davos isn't a conference this year. It's where the response is being built. And only now does Carney's earlier travel suddenly make full sense. Those stops in China and Qatar weren't disconnected diplomacy. They were preparation. By expanding trade ties with China, Canada reduced its exposure to U.S. economic retaliation. By securing massive strategic investment commitments from Qatar, Canada strengthened its economic resilience. And that matters, because standing up to Donald Trump carries real costs. Carney didn't just talk about resistance. He made sure Canada could afford it. Many leaders talk about standing up to Trump. Carney built the conditions to actually do it. Diversified trade. Strengthened alliances. Prepared military options. And then acted. This is why Canada can send troops without panic. This is why Carney can confront escalation without bluff. Because the groundwork is already in place. Greenland is not the end of the story. It's the test case. A test of whether rules still apply. Whether alliances still function. Whether mid-sized powers can still shape outcomes in a world increasingly dominated by coercion. Right now, Canada is choosing not to sit out history. And MarkCarney is choosing to lead. If this crisis escalates, this moment will be remembered, either as the point where the world drew a line, or the point where it failed to. The question is no longer what Donald Trump will do next. The question is whether the rest of the world will stand together, or fracture. And Canada has already made its choice. If you want serious, unfiltered analysis of Canada's role in a world that's coming apart, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments. Do you think Canada is doing the right thing, or is this a dangerous gamble? Let's talk.